So in my list from Psalm 1 and Psalm 2, I was going to go to Psalm 8. That was the next Psalm on my list. And before that, when I woke up this morning, I do my own readings. And I read 2 Samuel chapter 16 to 20. And then I put on my one of the commentaries that I look at. And because I did Psalm 2 yesterday, it just came to Psalm 3. And the first thing I see when you look at Psalm 3, okay, now I'm a little thing. I need a second Bible with me because. Give me another Bible. Any Bible? You read that, no?
Only you, Rahel.
I'll do it from mine.
What happened to Rahel?
Getting stuck for her.
I missed all of what you just said.
Yeah, so as I said, this morning I read 2 Samuel 16 to 20, and then I happened to open to, and it came to Psalm 3 while I wanted to do Psalm 8. And Psalm 3, if you look at Psalm 3, the title of Psalm 3 is A Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. And 2 Samuel 16 to 20 is the whole story of David fleeing from Absalom. And so I said I better do Psalm 3 instead of Psalm 8. Okay, so let me read Psalm 3 out, and then it's just 8 verses. Psalm 3, a Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. Okay. So this is the context, and actually starts from 2 Samuel chapter 15, where Absalom is one of David's sons, and the eldest son of one of David's wives. Okay, and he starts a rebellion against David, his father. Okay. If you look at 14, I'll just read it out. 2 Samuel. I'm going to be looking at 2 Samuel and then just jumping, because that's one of the beautiful things about the Psalms and also the prophets. As I've said, it's so good when you're often looking at prophets to understand that they prophesied in a context, and the context is in the history, in Kings and Chronicles and Samuel. You have the context, even Nehemiah, Ezra, and all these books of history. You have the context of why the prophets were saying what they were saying. And it's same with so many of the Psalms, that in the title you actually see when David wrote the Psalm. I have one small experience of this. I remember I have a song. When I say I have a song, it sounds like I am some Bethel level songwriter. No, but I wrote a song called Abiding, and I wrote it when my flat had been occupied by somebody else. So obviously there was some context to something happening in my heart when I wrote that song. So, but it says in 2 Samuel 14 of 25, verse 25, in all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. And whenever he cut his hair was so heavy apparently, because it was so lustrous and wonderful. And okay. So the context of this passage, of this psalm, and as we go through the psalm, I'll share some of the history, is that Absalom has initiated a rebellion against David, his father, who is the king. And David escapes Jerusalem, and he's escaping Jerusalem, and he's reached the fords at the Jordan. And at this point, he's very vulnerable to attack because he and his people are exhausted. And the most dangerous part is being here, and now they have to cross over. And so before they cross over, they're in this place of danger. And David sleeps in the night, and it's most likely that he gets up in the morning and he writes a psalm. So this is considered a morning psalm. Okay, and everything changes about this psalm when you realize the context in which he's written the psalm. Okay, so let's look at the first two verses. And I've got 4 P's here. It's 4 verses, four stanzas, shall we say, of 2 verses each. The first is the problem. Okay, obviously this psalm is a prayer. David is speaking to God. Okay, so the picture really is early in the morning he gets up and he's speaking to God. And the first 2 verses he shares the problem with God. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. Okay, so he brings the problem before God. What is the problem? The problem is that over the past 4 years, Absalom has nurtured the people of Israel to turn them against David. And he's actually done it, very cleverly. So we look at so he did a number of things, and I would recommend that you read 2 Samuel 15 to 20 after this. And this psalm will come alive to you. Okay, so I'm just reading verse 6 of 2 Samuel chapter 15. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So over this period of 4 years, he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. And when you look at verse 13, after he initiates the rebellion and in a sense proclaims himself in opposition to, in fact he proclaims himself as king. In verse 13 you see this, a messenger came and told David, the hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. And when David realizes that, he quickly escapes, he packs up and escapes Jerusalem. And in fact the whole army is with Absalom. David has to leave Jerusalem with only what are called his men. He has a band of faithful men who number possibly in the hundreds, if not thousands, but they're far less than his army, and he only has to leave with his household and what are called his men. And the rest of the army and the rest of the nation is with Absalom. So here he has wandered away. His foes have risen up against him, and he says, many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. And if you look at chapter 16, you have an example of that, the best example of that in verse 7. Okay, as they are walking, there's a man called Shimei who's part of Saul's family. As he cursed, Shimei said, get out, you man of blood, you scoundrel. He's talking to King David. Get out, you man of blood, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has handed the kingdom over to your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a man of blood. Okay, now it's not necessary. 16 verse 7. It's not necessarily true that he's a man of blood. He had not shed innocent blood, except, of course, for the blood of Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, and Shimei is not talking about that at all. But it must have really stung David, because he was the Lord's anointed. And here he's being just cursed by this man. The Lord has repaid you. The Lord has rejected you, so to speak. Okay? God will not deliver him. And of course, in this case, God has not delivered him. He is walking off in disgrace, so to speak. And later on, I'll share some other thing which compares it to what happened to Jesus. Okay, and so God will not deliver him. And then there's an interesting thing if you look at it's not there in our Bibles. In your NIV it won't be there, but in almost every other Bible, the word Selah comes, or Selah. Okay, it comes at the end of the second verse and at the end of the fourth verse, and it most likely means pause or intermission. So in a sense, this is the problem. What do we often do when we have problems?
We give God the solution.
Sorry, yeah, no. I mean, a real problem like this, we rush around for solutions in a sense. Okay, we're either frantic with activity or frantic in our heads. Even if you're not doing anything, you're frantic in your head. What is that called? That's called worry. And of course, recently we just did that talk 2 days ago about pain, and in a sense, that whole aspect of start worrying about what has happened, what could happen, dwelling in it, all of that. Okay. Instead of that, he says there's a problem. Pause. Be still. Okay. And so David starts his prayer with not even a prayer at the moment, it's a conversation with God. He starts it with a problem. Then verses 3 and 4, he shifts perspective from the problem. This is so important. Okay, our problem is that we keep looking at the problem. But David again lifts up his eyes, and we saw this again, I think, when did I share this? It's in Psalm 2, where the nations are plotting and your gaze is lifted towards happening in heaven. Again, he lifts his gaze to God. Okay? But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord and he answers me from his holy mountain. Okay?
And the second piece, perspective.
Perspective. The second piece, perspective. Instead of focusing on the problem, he changes perspective. He turns his eyes to God. And he starts not just praising God, but acknowledging who God is. He says, God is my shield. So he is my defense. Remember, he's saying all this at a time when he is most vulnerable to attack than he's ever been, even more than when he was running away from Saul. Okay. So he says, God, you are my shield. You are my defender. He says, God, you are my glory. As opposed to the glory that he had when he was king, you see. So you are my glory. It is so important. Otherwise, our focus is to get back to how things were. Forgetting that the one who is our glory is still with us. Whether he was king or whether he is now running away as a fugitive, God is still his glory. And the lifter of my head. Okay? When he says, you are the one who lifts my head high, it is a proclamation of faith. You've done something before, therefore you could do it again. God is the one who took him from being shepherd to king. He who lifted his head. Why will not God do that again? He says, I call out to the Lord and he answers me from his holy mountain. That is actually still not prayer. The tense of that verse is, this is what I do and this is what you do. This has been my experience of you. That I call out to you and you answer me from your holy mountain or your holy hill. Okay? So he's saying that prayer, because Lord, you are my shield, you are my glory, you are the lifter of my head. Prayer is a lifestyle to me. I call and you answer. He's still not brought his petition before God. But he is just speaking in terms of, this is this amazing thing. This is how amazing you are, God, and this is this amazing relationship that we have. I call and you answer. And so immediately from this most terrible problem, his focus has shifted, his perspective has shifted to God. Then we go to verses 5 to 6. And I'm going to call that peace. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Okay. Now I want to share what has happened here. So David has left Jerusalem and he has reached the fords of the Jordan. And in verse 14, chapter 16, verse 14, it says, the king and all the people with him arrived at their destination exhausted, and there he refreshed himself. Okay. Later on, they are described in this time as being weary and weak. Okay, so they've reached this place by night time, weary and weak and exhausted, and David has gone to sleep. Okay. Now, what has happened while he was asleep? Okay. This is what has happened while he was asleep. Okay. He had a counselor called Ahithophel, who was one of his major counselors, and Ahithophel has rebelled with Absalom and has now become Absalom's counselor. Okay. And so as David is leaving Jerusalem, he says this prayer. Okay. This is 15 verse 31. Now David had been told Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. So David prayed, O Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. And he carries on his way. And then after a while he meets another close friend of his called Hushai. And he tells Hushai, don't come with me, you go and stay with Absalom, and maybe you can counter Ahithophel's wisdom and advice. Okay? And so that's happened over there. And now they have traveled, reached the fords of the Jordan, and David has gone to sleep. And while he's sleeping, this is what has happened. Okay, Absalom comes to Jerusalem and he calls Ahithophel and says, what is your advice? What should we do now? Now the first advice Ahithophel gives him is, take your father's concubines and sleep with them in the sight of all Israel. There are 10 concubines left behind in Jerusalem. So they actually make a tent on top of the roof, and in the sight of all Israel, Absalom sleeps with the concubines, in order to say that I am king in every which way. I've even got his concubines. Now this is the result of a curse because of what David did with Bathsheba. But I don't want to go into that at this moment. Okay. And then Ahithophel says something to him. He says, let's go out right now, tonight, and attack David and his men, because they are weak and weary, and we will be able to win easily. And he says, let's take 12,000 men, which tells us that David had less than 12,000 men. Probably had less than half that number with him. Okay. So David is at his most vulnerable point, and Ahithophel gives the right advice to Absalom. Let's go and destroy him right now, and we will win. But Hushai, then Absalom calls Hushai and says, what do you say? He says, no, David will attack you and he will defeat you and this and that. So instead of that, gather all your forces together, and then we'll have one major fight, and we'll surely win in that fight. And so Ahithophel's good counsel is countered, and Absalom listens to Hushai, and the result is that actually Ahithophel goes home and commits suicide because he is disgraced. Alright? The point is this: I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. While he's sleeping, God has taken care of a major problem. You see, all this is happening while David is sleeping. And so in 16 verse 14, it can say there, and there he refreshed himself, because he woke up refreshed. So he's woken up in the morning, and here he comes out of his tent, and he sort of recites this psalm of praise almost, in the most vulnerable time of his life in terms of being defeated. And so in the night he slept peacefully, otherwise he would not have been refreshed in the morning if he had not slept peacefully. Okay, I lie down and sleep, I wake again because the Lord sustains me or supports me. And finally verse 7 to 8 is his actual prayer. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Now that language is actually wrong. You have struck all my enemies on the jaw. You have broken the teeth of the wicked. It's actually said as if it's already happened. Our Bibles all put it as strike all my enemies. But actually the tense is, you have done this already. From the Lord comes deliverance, or one of our songs, I know salvation comes from the Lord. That's actually the same phrase. May your blessing be on your people. That is how he ends this. Remember, he is still running from Absalom and his entire army at this point. He has no idea what the future holds. But this is how he ends this psalm, with this prayer. What is this prayer? Arise, save me. Because the battle is God's. He's experienced this so many times that though he's been a mighty warrior and all of that, he knows God has been with him. Where did it all start?
Saul, no?
Where did it all start? Yeah, David and Goliath, even before that, the lion and the bear, God has always been with him. The battle has always been God's. And so even now he says, Lord, you arise, you deliver me, you save me. And then he says it's already done. Because salvation comes from God. He is not even at this point in time crossed the Jordan into a place of some safety. Leave alone having won the battle. Which of course in chapter 19 eventually, in chapter 18 there's a mighty battle which they win. And Absalom is killed. And David returns as king.
Fourth piece prayer.
Sorry? Fourth piece prayer. So there's a problem, but then he has the right perspective. He's able to even be at peace in the midst of so much difficulty. And his prayer simply is, God, you save me. God, you've already done it. And we look at the situation around us and it's so relevant. We are disappointed that why has God not done things? Why are we still in trouble? And the point is this, the issue is not the problem, the issue is our perspective and receiving the peace that God wants to give us. No matter what the situation is, we can actually lie down in peace. Because it is the Lord who sustains us. The problem, the battle, the victory is the Lord's. Very quickly, I want to share how this is actually a picture of Jesus. Okay. Why do we know that? You can look at verse 30 of chapter 15. Here is David leaving Jerusalem to go into exile. And along the way, he goes along a certain path. Verse 30, but David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as his head was covered and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. And it was when he was walking in this way that Shimei comes and curses him. Okay. David walks along the same path that Jesus would have been dragged on by the enemies, by the guards, when he was being taken to be tried and then of course crucified. And the words are so similar. Where is your God now? And he says here, no, God will not deliver him. That's exactly what they shouted at Jesus on the cross. Where is your God now? Why is he not delivering you? Come down if you are the Messiah. Shimei is a type of the mocking that Jesus endured on the cross. And this whole picture of David going away in shame is a picture of Jesus being taken to the crucifixion. And this whole psalm, you can see, I would not put it past that David was actually, that Jesus was thinking of the psalm at certain points in time. Yeah? So we have the same rejection, God will not deliver him, the same mocking that happened to Jesus. We see David saying that. Okay? We see the fact of his perspective was entirely turned to God. You could not do anything, it tells Pilate, if God didn't allow it. On the cross, once he deals with people, his focus is on his Father. I thirst, it is finished. He's just talking about his Father. His focus is entirely on God. I love the third one. I lie down and sleep, I wake again. Well, that's what happened. He lay down for 3 days and 3 nights and he woke up again. Okay, a picture of the resurrection. And finally, of course, the prayer, arise, Lord, deliver me, all of that. And that you have already done it. Isn't that what he said? It is finished. Okay, not just normal enemies, the rulers and authorities. Colossians tells us that on the cross, the powers and principalities, the rulers and authorities were taken care of. the ultimate enemy, Satan, sin, death. And I actually love how David ends it. He says, may your blessing be on your people. It goes back to, it's almost as if God, do all of this if I will be a blessing to your people. See, he was an amazing blessing to the people and something went wrong. Otherwise, why would they have turned to Absalom? Somewhere he drifted in his kingship and he has to return back to that. Somebody who was so beloved of the people, how could this guy over 4 years take his place in their hearts? And so in a sense, though he wants to be delivered and all of that, he wants God's people to be blessed. And that's how the psalm ends. And of course, God knew that it was David and not Absalom who was a blessing to the people. And God restored David back to his position. If we want to be in that same place, okay, we bring our problems to God, but we shift our gaze to Him. We have His perspective. We receive His peace. And we pray that prayer of faith. God, you've already done it. Then we can wait for His time. Amen.